Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Forefathers Organics. I'm your host, Alex Brasky. Solo today, my co-host, Ajay Cybulski, a day off before the Bills' first game of the 2024 season, the home opener against the Arizona Cardinals this Sunday, 1 p.m. at Highmark Stadium. The NFL season has already kicked off with two matchups, the Chiefs taking care of the Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles taking care of the Green Bay Packers. But everybody in Western New York highly anticipating the Bills' first matchup of the season. Perhaps an underrated Arizona Cardinals team coming to town. We'll have more for you tomorrow. A couple of pods coming for you in the morning, and then a pregame show with AJ and myself after the inactives are released before the game. So we have everything you need for Bills Cardinals right here, right now on the podcast. And before we get too deep into this podcast, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, with AJ taking his well-earned day off, he's really put in great work this week. We brought in Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports and also Reid of 26 Shirts and Bills Mafia to come in and spread their knowledge and what they're feeling heading into week one for the Bills and really expectations for the season. With Chris, we dive into the rookie class and the practice squad. With Dell, we dive into his experiences on previous opening days and what he has planned coming up this Sunday, kind of a fan's perspective on the home opener against the Arizona Cardinals. And before we get to those two interviews, I just want to start today's podcast with a quick conversation by myself, I guess, about the whole Xavier Worthy and Keon Coleman situation that's really gone ablaze on social media since the Chiefs win over the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night. Obviously, Xavier Worthy, a big performance in that game, 2 touchdowns, big plays on both of them. One really kind of a rushing touchdown coming around the end, a cavalry in front of him, and then the other down the sideline on a deep ball from Patrick Mahomes, relatively uncovered, pretty much wide open down the field. So I'm not sure you can write the narrative on either of these players based on one game without the Bills having taken the field for their week one matchup. We still have to see what Keon Coleman has to offer. But in terms of Xavier Worthy, both of those plays really set up well for him. Like I said, all the blockers in front of him, a great play call from Andy Reid, the other a defensive breakdown. So while it's a great start for Xavier Worthy in a Chiefs uniform, and it does make Bills consider if history is going to repeat itself with the trade to the Chiefs in the draft, the way that they kind of gave the Chiefs Patrick Mahomes, now you kind of give the Chiefs Xavier Worthy. I know there's debate on whether or not the Bills, quote unquote, gave the Chiefs either player, but it certainly gives you pause when your pick could have been used on a player that shows out as Worthy did during that week one opener. But at the same time, like I said, both of those plays really advantageous situations for Worthy. Didn't have an extremely productive day outside of those two plays. So a lot more to be seen from him. And we'll see if he can put a whole season together as really a reliable receiver that Mahomes can go to down in and down out, game in and game out, or if he's just the gadget guy that he really put on display during that game against the Ravens. And as far as Keon Coleman's concerned, he still has an opportunity to spread his wings this weekend against the Arizona Cardinals, no pun intended. Didn't like what I saw from him during the preseason as much as what I saw from him during training camp. I think there's a lot of growth to be had there. But at the same time, he has all the tools that the Bills are looking for when they drafted him. He can go up and get it, make those contested catches in the red zone, something that Worthy really doesn't have the ability to do. He was presented an opportunity against the Ravens and didn't really fare well on that rep. He was able to break up a potential interception, but didn't really have a chance to come down with the ball. And I think that is something that Keon Coleman presents that Xavier Worthy will not. So let's just pump the brakes here, as my friend from Cover One, Aaron Quinn, likes to say, and and really take it slow with the Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman discourse. I know that's really tough for Bills Mafia to do sometimes, take things slowly and not overreact. But I think that's the smart play here. Let things play out. Maybe mid-season we can circle back and have an evaluation on these two players. But even at that time, I think into these two players' second year, third year, I think that's when you really see them grasp hold of this offense. It's tough for rookie wide receivers to really get ingratiated right away, build that rapport with their quarterback in their first season. So like I said, I think the story still to be written on both of those players. And Bills Mafia, while maybe some cause for concern, let's take a step back and not overreact to Xavier Worthy's 2-touchdown performance. But that's my thoughts on the subject, and now we'll move forward with more pressing matters, namely our discussions with Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports and Del Reid of 26 Shirts and Bills Mafia. First up, Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports. All right, here with Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports and host of One Bills Live, gracious enough to join us here in opening week. And we're recording this on Thursday, Chris. NFL football finally back, the opener tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to get going here.
Yeah, it's great to have football back. It's felt like forever since we've actually had a football game that really matters. I know that's the general narrative today. To even watch Chiefs-Ravens, two teams that the Bills have seen a lot in the AFC and in the playoffs, of course, will be an extra fun way, even though it's not the Bills, for Bills fans to start the season tonight. And then to get a Sunday 1 p.m. kickoff, if it's going to be like 60 to 65 degrees and sunny, I think it's the perfect way for Bills fans to start this 2024 season.
Yeah, everybody for sure raring to go. That place is going to be packed and up for grabs on Sunday. Like I said, I truly, truly can't wait. Let's just start off, Chris, by getting your opinions on how the offseason has gone for the Bills. They made a distinct transition, letting go of a slew of veteran players, bring in some younger players. They're still one of the older teams in the league, but there's no doubt they're going through a transitional phase and expecting contributions from a lot of new faces this year. What are your overarching takeaways from the offseason and just kind of your expectations entering the year for the Bills?
If we're talking general, I think it was time for the Bills to kind of turn that next chapter, to go younger, to accentuate speed and youth and explosion, because it felt like, especially at safety, and this is no disrespect to Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde, who were just staples of that Sean McDermott defense that has been so good since he arrived in Buffalo. But we all agree that they looked a step or two slow, especially last season. They got injured over the last 2 years, and these stable forces on the back end just were not the same. I thought up front, Mitch Morse was a release that I didn't think was a bad idea, given his concussion history. And I think he was obviously super stable, but was not someone that was really moving the needle at center. And when they would face a higher level defensive tackle, he would sometimes be a little bit of a liability, either in pass protection or blocking for the run. Tre'Davious White was a fan favorite, first pick of the Sean McDermott era, but had just not played a lot of football the last 2 seasons, or I guess 3 seasons as well. Yeah. So I just felt like it was time. I want to see this Sean McDermott and now Bobby Babbitt defense with that we know is a great scheme that has been time-tested, one of the better defenses in football, with some new guys looking to prove themselves that are younger with more speed and more explosion. So I think from that perspective, it was probably a tough pill to swallow. And I don't know if it was something that necessarily Brandon Beane went into, the day after the Chiefs lost, said, hey, we need to totally turn to a new chapter. But I'm glad he did, because for as good as the Bills have been, that group ultimately didn't get it done, and they needed to get younger. They didn't want to really be the oldest team in the league, guys coming off injuries into their 30s. So I think from that perspective, it was a great job by Brandon Beane to still get a second-round pick for Stephon Diggs on his way out next year, and then to clear that cap room in 2025, I think will be a boon for this team as they continue to build around Josh Allen into his late 20s. I would have maybe liked to see a little bit more at wide receiver. I know they went the kind of the bargain bin route with MVS and Chase Claypool, Mac Hollins. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Keon Coleman pick. He was one of the receivers I had further down my board in the draft. that was really the only kind of gripe that I had. I think everything else they did, filling out the defense. I love the Cole Bishop selection in the draft. And I know that we're going to get to those rookies in a little bit. But I think Brandon Beane did another good job managing this team, building it, while having a quarterback making that maybe not elite level money anymore, but certainly has a hefty contract on the books. And so I think off-season wise, to get that Von Miller transaction where he, reduced his salary to like about $8.5 million down from 17, helped Brandon Beane. But I think the GM again did another very good job balancing, building this team through free agency and the draft.
And I guess I'm going to switch it up on you a little bit. We'll get to the rookies in a second. Why don't we, I guess, go next to the overall security of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane? I brought it up earlier this week with Joe Biscaglia. What would it take for either of these guys' job security to be called into question by the team? Obviously, the fan base has been a little disconcerting with Sean McDermott over the past couple of years, maybe a little less so with Brandon Beane. What do you think it would take this year for the team to start to maybe put the wheels in motion to potentially replace these guys in the near term? Maybe not as soon as this season, but perhaps the offseason or next season if things are to go awry. What would it take for that to happen?
Well, like you mentioned, I think Brandon Beane has a longer leash than Sean McDermott, because I just think when you're a head coach, there's so much more of a microscope on you when it comes to in-game decisions and challenges and timeouts and things like that, and just losing in the playoffs when you seemingly have a really good roster. I think what it would take for, let's say, Sean McDermott would probably be another loss in the divisional round. That would make 4 years in a row losing in the second round of the playoffs. I don't know if that would necessarily mean that he would get fired the day after that or the night of, but if you're saying put things into motion where he would maybe be on the hot seat, I think that ultimately would be the case. I don't really think Brandon Beane really, like anything outside of a disastrous season, would put him in that kind of dangerous territory to potentially lose his job. They've just extended them recently. So I think McDermott is a little bit closer to the hot seat than Brandon Beane. And I think the ownership would like to see, and certainly the fans as well, for the Bills to get further into the playoffs than they have. They've kind of been stuck on this divisional round since 13 seconds.
And one more question before we get to the rookies. Do you think this team is still built well enough to win a Super Bowl? You say that the fans and the team obviously would like to see them advance past that divisional round. Do you think they're capable with the personnel? You mentioned it off the top. You like what Brandon Beane has done. Are you comfortable that this team is still a championship contender? Obviously, with Josh Allen, that's the easy answer. They always are. Outside of that, the supporting cast, is there enough around him to complement him in those tough games down the stretch?
That's a really good question. We don't know, and I certainly don't know as well in terms of the rest of the roster, like what those players are going to be, because
everything's so new.
Everything's so new, and beyond that, the last 2 or 3 years, it was like the same roster. They had so much roster retention with Matt Milano returning when no one really expected it. Jordan Poyer as well. The receiver core was the same. They were kind of adding in, an Emmanuel Sanders moving on from John Brown, and they brought Cole Beasley and John Brown back 2 years ago late in the season. So a lot of familiar faces that we knew what we were going to get. Now, me being someone that beyond kind of covering the Bills for CBS, but mostly covering the NFL draft and young players, I have a decently good sense of the type of young players that they added to this roster. And to answer your question succinctly, I think they do. I think they have the supporting cast along with a very good season from Josh Allen, which you pretty much need to win any Super Bowl today, a high caliber season from your quarterback. I think they have that supporting cast of younger players like the Dorian Williams, like the Cole Bishops, to maybe even Ray Davis at running back to complement James Cook, to be good enough for this team to make a deep run in the playoffs, get to a Super Bowl, and win a Super Bowl. We just had a very similar conversation a season ago with the Kansas City Chiefs after moving on from Tyreek Hill. Like, hey, can they do it? Who are all these young players? Who's Rashee Rice? Who's this guy? Who's Noah Gray? Is George Karlaftis good enough? Can it be someone else besides Chris Jones making plays? We know Nick Bolton, a lot of those younger corners, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson, L'Jarius Sneed, who's now in Tennessee. They were all younger guys that weren't super household names. And with a great season, especially in the playoffs, from Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones, the rest of that relatively unknown supporting cast did its part. And I think that supporting cast and this young Bills supporting cast are both good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Now let's talk about that young supporting cast, and we'll start right at the youngest of the young, the rookie class. You've mentioned a few of them here: Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop, Reid Davis. Who's going to be, in your eyes, someone who really looks into these rookies and knows them front to back, who's going to be the most productive for the Bills this season? Obviously, all eyes on Keon Coleman throughout the preseason and training camp, splashing on social media day after day, but also Reid Davis has come on strong. You haven't seen Cole Bishop out there due to injury, but returning to full participation in practice on Wednesday, so he seems set to start the regular season healthy. You also have a Dwayne Carter, a Javon Solomon, who did miss practice on Wednesday, along that defensive line, who could also be contributors, and then there's others down the list. Who do you think is going to be the most productive rookie for the Bills this season?
I'll go with two. I'll go with one on each side of the ball. Like you mentioned, we have not really seen Cole Bishop since that injury in training camp where he made a really great play on the football, hurt his shoulder. I think he is the quintessential like Sean McDermott type of safety, that he did so much at Utah. He would be covering the slot on first down. Then he'd be that Taron Johnson linebacker on the outside on second down. Then he'd be a free safety on third down and make a play on the ball. That's like really his encapsulation of what he did at Utah. He's a premier athlete. He ran under 4.5, which is certainly plenty fast enough in today's NFL at the safety spot. 6'2", over 200 pounds. He's got short arms. That's really the only kind of ding on him in terms of the physical or the measurable side of it. But I think he's smart. He's done a lot in terms of responsibilities. And we know that from those Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde days, that Sean McDermott's going to ask his safeties to be interchangeable. So we may not see, Cole Bishop playing 70 snaps week 1 or week 2, but I think as the season progresses, and even though there are those veterans like Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin, obviously starting this weekend, Mike Edwards there, I think Cole Bishop will ultimately be the most productive in those key games in November, December, January. On the other side of the ball, I could really see Reid Davis being that complement to James Cook, who starts to eat into James Cook's workload as the season progresses. Now, I'll say I was not in love with Reid Davis as a running back prospect. I wasn't particularly high on James Cook relative to where he was picked either, but I think the Bills' run game under Aaron Kromer, all the different type of things they do, they run zones, stretch plays, they run a lot of power, they get the lead blocker involved with the RPO game. And with that dual threat ability that Josh Allen has, it just keeps defenses on their toes, always looking for the pass. I think Reid Davis could be in for a year where maybe if he's not incredibly productive between the 20s, inside the red zone scoring touchdowns, and even catching the football, which we certainly know is what Joe Brady wants to utilize his running backs in the pass game. And James Cooks has been a little iffy in terms of his hands there. I think Reid Davis will be, again, kind of like Cole Bishop late in this season, will be more of a player that's relied upon by this Bills team.
Before we move on from the rookies, how about elsewhere a little bit down the pecking order in terms of draft selection? And let's stay in the trenches. I mentioned Dwayne Carter, Javon Solomon, also Cedric Van Pran Granger and Tylon Grable. You really need a lot from Carter, I think, this year in that defensive tackle rotation. Maybe not as much from a Solomon, Cedric Van Pran Granger, or Grable, but how did you view their preseason, and how did you view them coming out of the draft? I know Grable kind of more of a developmental prospect. A lot of people thought Cedric Van Pran Granger may have been NFL ready. Javon Solomon probably more developmental than Dwayne Carter. Do you see it similarly to that? Are you high on all four of these players? I think from my perspective, the offensive line, while a lot of people are comfortable in the depth, it's a lot of unproven depth. And Tylon Grable, I think, was up and down throughout the preseason and training camp. And while he is a late pick, I'm not sure what you're expecting out of him, especially in the near term. I think there's a lot left to be determined in terms of the quality of those four picks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'll start with Dwayne Carter, actually, because I thought you brought up a good point, Alex, that a lot is probably needed of him because the Bills' defensive tackle depth, I don't think is amazing, especially in terms of that up the field pass rusher. It's really Ed Oliver and that's it. And they're really relying on Dwayne Carter to be that type. He's a little bit, I don't want to say undersized, but he's not 320, 330 to eat blockers. They drafted him to get up the field. So while they do need Dwayne Carter, I don't necessarily think he's in for that big rookie season. We didn't see a lot from him in the preseason or camp at all. He was playing into the third and fourth quarters in some of those preseason games. I was a little bit lower on him than where the Bills picked him, but it made sense from just a need perspective, like I mentioned. To me, it's Javon Solomon. I think he's going to be the player that even if he's just in a situational role, second and long, third and long, they're not going to ask him to, be this tremendous run defender at his size, even though he does have very long arms relative to how tall he is. But if he's just a pass rushing specialist, can soak up a lot of knowledge from Von Miller, who's a similar body type, I could see Javon Solomon maybe not getting 8 to 10 to 12 sacks, but being a 20 to 30 to 40 pressure guy, which in a limited role would be a huge boost for this Bills defense, because I still think they need a lot of pass rush beyond Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, more of a rotational piece that's not going to get you a ton of those sacks anyway. So I'm higher on Javon Solomon based on what he did in camp and preseason. And I loved him coming out of Troy. If he was an inch or two taller and weighed 245 to 250 instead of exactly a 240, I think he would have been picked way before the Bills selected him. So Javon Solomon is the later round pick, maybe even Daquan Hardy too in the slot as that kind of Taron Johnson backup. Those two are a lot more fascinating to me, and I was higher on both of them than Dwayne Carter or any of the other rookies that were picked later in this Bills draft class.
So I think you just answered one of my final questions here. Who from the practice squad could work their way into a rotational role? And I think the clear answer would be a Daquan Hardy, who you just mentioned. A lot of people, basically everybody, expecting him to make the 53-man roster. Mm-hmm. They don't keep him. Instead, they do get him back on the practice squad. You think he's got a good chance by season's end to perhaps earn the trust of the coaching staff and work his way to a jersey? Maybe not every game day, but maybe as the season goes along.
Yeah, that's another good question, because I know with Taron Johnson there, who's just such a good player, he's really an elite player on this Bills team. He's the half linebacker slot defender that can really do it all for Sean McDermott, and Sean McDermott has so much trust in. Because of that, I don't really know how Daquan Hardy could get onto the field outside of being a returner and maybe in some like dime package looks for the Bills. But in terms of just overall skill with the 42.5-inch vertical, running under 4.40 at the combine, he's an explosive athlete. I thought he was actually pretty good in coverage at Penn State in the slot. But beyond him, I think Tyrell Shavers, who I know you covered very closely at training camp, kind of felt like he was a lock for the 53-man roster. Then he gets to the preseason with all the Bills quarterback injuries. There was barely any targets to go around. And like I said at the outset, the receiver group, I think, will be decent at the top with Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, but you need a lot of depth in today's NFL. And if Mac Hollins isn't really cutting it, if Keon Coleman has troubles getting open, I could see Tyrell Shavers just getting an opportunity midway through the season from the practice squad. And the last one that I'll bring up was a favorite of mine during the draft process, and he was great in the preseason, Frank Gore Jr., whether it's an injury to the running back spot, and we know that there's a lot of prevalence of injury at the running back position, or just whether it's Ty Johnson, James Cook, or even Ray Davis aren't playing up to the level that the Bills like them to. I think Frank Gore is plenty good enough, even though he's not quite as big as his dad was. He's not this powerful back. He's elusive. He has great vision. He runs with authority. He runs and plays bigger than his size. I could see him as a October, November, December call-up that actually produces in this Bills pretty quality blocking scheme that they've had under Aaron Kromer.
All right, Chris, before we get out of here, what's your favorite part about week one?
Well, my friends from high school that are now living in West Seneca, they do an awesome tailgate. They go all out. They've added like all the money that they've gotten where people donated. They've thrown it back into like they have 2 flat tops. They have a deep fryer. They have 2 deep fryers. They have an infrared deep fryer and do deep fried turkey later in the season. So being at the tailgate week one is usually the most people that are at that tailgate. They're doing stinger subs, a against the Cardinals this week on Sunday. So it's always fun. The vibes are always so high and so great. And to have a Sunday week 1 game, it's been a couple of years since the Bills have had that luxury at home. The weather seems to be okay. I don't think we're going to get any rain. That's probably my favorite part. And this year in particular, to go to more of on the field observations, just to see, like we've talked about, how all these new pieces look within this scheme on both sides of the ball that we know in the past, and even last year, just in that small sample with Joe Brady, has been able to produce pretty quality results. Like, how does Dorian Williams play? How does Curtis Samuel play? We didn't really see a lot from him. Does Khalil Shakir take that step? How does Greg Rousseau play in that 5th-year option deal year? Like, it's really fun and interesting after we had grown accustomed to these same cast of characters on this Bills team to just get a new cast of characters that, at least on the field in week 1 this year, will be really fascinating to watch against the Cardinals.
All right. I might have to have you send me your location on Sunday. Come by and grab a Stinger tub. That sounds unbelievable. But Chris, thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy week for everybody. Glad to have you on, and we'll be sure to have you on again.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Can you tell everybody where they can find your work, please?
Oh, just Chris Trapasso on X, CBS Sports. I not doing a ton of NFL draft yet, but a lot of young player analysis. What I always tell people, literally, if you want to read my stuff, which I would be very grateful for you to do, Google Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports. You'll get my archive right there and see everything that I'm doing in season. I'll do a mock draft every week. I grade the 1st and 2nd year quarterbacks on a weekly basis. Practice squad power rankings, which is always a fun article for me, comes out every Friday. And then what's fun for me, and I love doing, Monday and Thursday are like open days for me. So like if Josh Allen throws 7 touchdowns on Sunday, they may have me break that down. Or if the Ravens run game looks terrible against the Chiefs, they may have me break that down on Thursday. So there's some room for some league-wide analysis pieces that I certainly love doing. It's something that my editor and I have kind of worked out the last couple of years. So that's kind of where you can find my work and really what I'll be producing on a weekly basis at CBS Sports.
All right, Chris, we'll be locked in. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Alex.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, I'd like to thank Chris for joining us. Great stuff from him, as always. Really one of the more analytical minds when it comes to the draft, younger players, and really hunting prospects and evaluating players on the practice squad week in and week out. So very valuable stuff from Chris on today's podcast. And without further ado, let's bring in Mr. Bills Mafia himself, Del Reid. All right, here with Del Reid, Bills super fan and 26 shirts owner and everything charitable in Buffalo as well. Does a great job spreading the wealth, as they say, and helping out various causes with his business and really spreading the love amongst Bills Mafia. And wanted to get Del in here to join us leading into week 1 and give us a fan's look at what to expect this season. And Del, we'll just begin with this. From your perspective and from looking at it through a fan's lens, how have you viewed the past several months? How do you view this team entering the regular season, and just your overall takeaways from the offseason?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite. It's been a wild offseason, to say the least, with so many departures. Was it like 6 of 8 captains leaving the team? And I remember like arguing with everybody on Twitter that Diggs was not leaving. There's no way. They owe him too much money. It's impossible. And then Brandon Beane was like, "Watch this." And I mean, it says a lot about a player. If somebody is willing to take a $35 million hit just for you to not be on their team, right. Maybe he views that as a badge of pride. I mean, I think it's embarrassing, but that's another topic. As for the team going into the season, I'm pretty optimistic that they can really make some noise this year. Maybe go the distance. I think you look at the Kansas City Chiefs last year and their wide receiver core, and just how they were kind of slow out of the gate. They lost that opening night game against Detroit. The wide receiver core, even against the Bills, there were some real wide receiver mistakes that were made during that
Kadarius
game.
Toney,
But
the offside.
Kadarius Toney,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. God bless him for that. But
no longer on the Chiefs.
No longer. Yeah, I follow a specific Giants fan on Twitter who absolutely hates that player.
Yeah.
But as a
for good reason.
Well, for sure. But so I think the Bills may be similar. They might be a little slow out of the gate. It might take a little bit for this offense to gel, but I think they're going to come together. And you look at how the two captains were named last year, just one offensive captain, one defensive captain. This is Josh Allen's team now. Truly, with Stephon Diggs gone, this is Josh Allen's team. It's his offense to run. It completely runs through him. It always has, but it's in all things visible. It's his team. So I do think the team is going to do well. I think it's going to be tough, though. They have a gauntlet to go through. When you look at some of the matchups that the division mates have, and then what the Bills have, the first 6, 7, 8 games of the season, it's going to be tough. So we might end up having one of our late season, we got to make the playoffs or whatever.
Do you think the fan base can? Do you think the fan base can survive that this year?
I don't know about the fan base, but I don't know if I can. If I'm being honest, like 5-5, 6-6, whatever it was at the end of the year last year, that was tough. Even the wins felt like losses. So many of the wins that game against the Giants and the Buccaneers, just these tough games. But I'm excited to see how this team comes together. We got a new offensive coordinator who isn't taking somebody else's offense and trying to implement it his own way. Now it's his offense that he can implement however he wants. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they announce that Babbage was making the defensive calls this season?
Yes, they have. McDermott was asked about that on Wednesday, and that has been made official. All
right, so we have a head coach who's going to have a little bit more brain space available this season, for the game day decisions and whatnot. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think they obviously, as long as you have Josh Allen, you have a chance to win the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens.
Now, I want to get your takeaways from just the week 1 opening day experience. And let's start with some of your best memories, maybe some of your worst memories from week 1 and opening day, and specifically the home opener at Highmark Stadium. You went through the drought years. You've come out the other side, now watching the team reap the benefits of success. What have those days been like for you over the years, beginning with those drought years and then blending into the current Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane era that, like I said, has kind of produced so much success?
So there's a lot to choose from, obviously, being the old crusty man that I am. I have a lot of, opening days to think about. I think of 2007 against the Broncos, how Mike Shanahan ran out that kicker at the last second, like the literal last second, to kick a field goal and win the game. I remember watching him just run out from the sideline, and he's not going to make it. He's not going to have time. And then it goes through, and then it was the most quiet walk out of that stadium that I may have ever had, because it was crazy. Fast forward a year, and it's not quite opening day, but it was 2008. The Bills started 3-0, and this is before the renovations. So if you were leaving the lower bowl, you had to wait through this long stairway processional to get out of the stadium. And I remember everybody just going 3-0, 3-0, like the whole concourse chanting it. So that was cool. Not quite an answer to your question.
That may have been the loudest. That may have been the loudest exit you've ever experienced. You went from the quietest to one of the loudest.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then one opening day that really is kind of a special memory a little bit. I think it was 2013. And obviously everybody knows that the Bills have embraced the term Bills Mafia back in 2020, making it, the official name of the fan base, which is, I could live another 50 years and it will still be surreal to me. But they they're just rapid firing all these tweets leading up to the kickoff, and they put out this one. It said, "This one's for the fans." That's all the tweets said. It said hashtag Bills Mafia. I think I almost dropped my phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could not believe that they actually tweeted it, because during the previous regime, previous ownership, they would scrub out the term Bills Mafia from the tweets. So that was really cool. I don't even remember if the Bills won that game or not. I think they lost it. I think that was going in. I think it was EJ's first game, and they ended up losing to the Patriots, I think, if I remember correctly. But that's one specific memory I have as well too.
Yeah, that's great. That truly is a great memory. That's kind of the coming of age of Bills Mafia. There's been kind of, I'm sure, stages of growth over the years, and that being kind of its genesis, or really like I said, coming of age moment really has to be special for you and the other founders of the movement that has really taken the Western New York area by storm. What about this opening day? What do you have planned for this Sunday? It's a big year for this team, and to open it with a Sunday 1:00 game, I'm sure very refreshing for the fans. What do you have planned this weekend, specifically Sunday morning and afternoon?
I love, so that's the one downside of the team being good, is that they play all different days, all different times. Like, give me Sunday 1 p.m. 17 games in a row, I'm fine with it. But so this is a special home opener as of late. None of these Monday night or 4 p.m. I mean, we're at home too for week 1. It's great. Anyway, I'm excited about it. I'm gonna check out my buddy John's tailgate game day hospitality down on the end of Abbott. I think it's at Southwestern. You think I would know by now, but I'm always on the other side of the stadium.
Everything's GPS. Somebody just sends you their location, and you just follow it that way. That's 2024 for you. We're not in 2013 anymore. We're just send you the location, and I'll find it.
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's right across from Prohibition there. But I'm looking forward to hanging out there. I always try to make my way through all these different tailgates. I've had the opportunity to meet so many different people over the past 10, 12 years, 13 years. So I'll spend most of my time over there. But I'll walk through my friends, Shane, the Bills Mafia house and everything, down the boulevard. Even though my girls are a little grown now, they used to love walking down there when they were younger and everything before games. But so it should be fun. I'm just excited to have a normal game, a normal 1 p.m. Sunday game. The weather's going to be perfect football weather, as I understand it. I don't think there's going to be rain.
I think there's a slight chance, but I think that's dissipating as the week goes on here.
All right. I didn't hear that, so that's fine. So it's going to be great weather, great football weather. And I didn't hear that just now when you said it. But it should be a good time. Looking forward to it very much.
All right, Del. Well, thank you for joining us. Before you get out of here, why don't you tell the people what you have going on at 26 Shirts? What kind of gear are you featuring right now? Do you have any events coming up? What can the people expect from you and your crew over there at 26 Shirts?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So obviously we're putting out new designs all the time at 26shirts.com. We're starting to open up our vault little by little and making more and more of our older designs available on demand. We'll talk more about that later. But we have a popcorn launch tomorrow on Friday. I don't know when this podcast is going live, but Friday we're going to have a popcorn launch with our friends Shanae. We've done so many beer collabs over the years. We're doing a popcorn collab. It's going to be fun. Shanae's in Kenmore, and then we'll be at Riverworks for that event on Saturday. I know Joe Marino has been plugging it on his podcast a ton. He's going to be there. And then football on Sunday. So let's go. But and Saturday, if you're in town, you're visiting in town, stop in the showroom. I'll be here. We're going to open specially before the home game, just for people that want to gear up last second, especially for the out-of-towners.
All right, great. So Del Reid, Bills Mafia founder, 26 Shirts. Thank you for joining us, and have a great opening day.
Go Bills.
All right, we'd also like to thank Del for joining us, carving out some time. He is set up, I believe, at his shop today. So if you're looking for merch before game day, head on out and you can visit at Del Reid on Twitter. He's already posted the location, so be sure to check him out and buy his stuff. He's got great merch. Him and his guys and gals over there at 26 Shirts. So that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with a couple of podcasts, one in the morning, one pregame before Bills versus Cardinals. I'd like to thank Chris and Del for joining me today, and happy to have AJ back tomorrow on the podcast. We'll see you next time.